towards climate neutrality. Very cool. Thank you very much for joining us here. She's in dialogue with 3 researchers in the creative case study, Repurposing Place in Post-Conceptual Art and Design. Emil, and I cannot pronounce your surname for the life of me, is a professor at the Department of Sociology and Political Science at NTNU. Based in social culture and anthropology and interdisciplinary research, his work focuses on capitalism, very rude word, as a sociological system, managerial society, also a very rude word, and organizational worlds, and on economic and cultural transformations. Jakob is an artist, researcher, and professor with a focus on material and spatial practices. He is currently head of department at the Trondheim Academy of Fine Art, NTNU, and is engaged with addressing transforming the role of art in society. And Prina, would you like me to introduce you, or would you like to stay a cat in the shadows? Okay, I understand that perfectly. Okay, fantastic. Welcome, and we'll just let you have a chat. Would you like to begin somewhere? I'm going to give you this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe, because as you can see, our projects are quite different, even though as we were talking before this, we found some points of commonality. Would you guys like to introduce your project really quickly? I will then do the same, and then we can talk about what we found in common.
Okay, sounds great. So our case study is repurposing place through post-conceptual art and design. And this case study, we surveyed a lot of examples of this. I mean, there's a plethora. It's a tremendous amount of examples. But to try to systematize it and try to work with it in a way that that enabled us to develop an advanced venture, we zoomed in on one example, the work of Pablo Capitan del Rio, a work called Mirador that is located in Genalguacil, and as we can see here, and this place here is made by it's handmade tiles with pigmented fertilizers in the tiles, so that the tiles are fertilizing the ground and making the trees and the plants around it grow. So it's a regenerative work of art that has it's locally made. It has an ecological dimension, and it's of course it's a piece of art. So we tried in the advanced venture to really extract some of the main dimensions of value from this, and try to think through it as a generative device of a venture, so that it's situated in a local community, but the idea of this work can travel. I mean, it can travel to use other materials. It can be placed in other communities. Other people can work with it. It's collaborative, participatory, and has this circular, ecological, iterative way of generating value. So this is basically our approach, right?
Yeah, and I found it really interesting when we started talking, this idea of the approach that can travel, even though, of course, like these tiles are fixed in place, right? Because that's also the creative case study that I'm here to represent is the stand-up strategies, so nomadic and ephemeral modes of creative practice. And this is obviously something that has a long tradition in theater, and this idea of like the traveling artistic group that goes from place to place, but also became actually quite prevalent during COVID, when it was hard to all gather together in a room. And if you could have a mode of performance that was something you could do outside, something you could do in non-conventional spaces, this was a way of bringing communities together with the arts and with creativity that was still possible. And so, yeah, the project that Joe mentioned, we built the City on Rock and Coal, has been running in Ireland over the last 2 years. And basically, you see an image from it here, from one of the only times that we had a proper black box theater. And what we were doing was going around to different communities and basically doing shows about climate change where everything is improvised. So, you know, the audience or whatever people from the community were able to attend, whether it's in a real venue or in a community hall or outside or in a pub or wherever, they were given these written prompts about climate change, what makes it hard to talk about, but also like connection to nature, like we see in some of these places that is so important to reflect on. And whatever people wrote in response to this is what then the show was about. So there were both improvisers and theater makers, as well as scientists and activists in the cast, and basically everything, whether it's like a comedy sketch, a piece of music, or a scientific presentation, was in response to what these communities wanted us to talk about. And I think that this both is a very flexible way to include more people in artistic processes. You know, we visited like 8 offshore islands off the coast of Ireland, and places that many, both like artistic and scientific practices did not necessarily always go to. But also, yeah, a means of sometimes identifying and relating the community that's already there, and people who might, you know, care about climate action but feel quite isolated, gathering those people in one place and being like, hey, like, look who else is in the room, and, you know, just starting that conversation, which often was very much concerned with like the emotional realities of climate change rather than the, you know, capital F facts. And I think it was interesting in talking with you guys, like the importance of community and of bringing people together in these artistic practices, how central I think that ended up being for you as well in looking at your the different studies, of which this one emerged as the advanced venture. Yeah, and you had a system for for selecting the advanced venture, right? In terms of like the criteria that you were looking at, right? We were talking about these like 3 categories that ended up being very important for you.
No, it's true. Yeah, it's true. And they were actually with us from the beginning. I mean, maybe I can reflect that question in just a second.
Sure. Yeah.
No, because, no, obviously, participation or community, I think, was a carrying element. And the creative methods or processes in themselves as well. And obviously, the thing that, in a way, bound us mostly to the concrete material qualities or properties of this project specifically, but also in general, was sort of we defined as ecologies. And I think so. In a way, what we realized in the process was that we needed all 3 parameters to rotate, in a way, in order for this to become a sort of a sustainable proposal. And you could easily, as Emil was talking about before, swap specific elements of that. For example, the tiles could be something different, didn't need to be that, depending on the context. And that's what I wanted to get back to you about. But the point is that I think that in order for this to be a sustainable situation, or proposal, so to speak, we need to have all 3 parameters of the model to start moving together at the same time.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, so there's something, I mean, there's something that your proposal left with me, which was similar to us, which was this place relation, or the idea of a site, or addressing a specific context.
Yeah, and having something that really fits in that place and is like, you know, not just for that place, but like of that place, which also, yeah, of course, really interesting with your work. And I think too, right, like these projects that are site specific, I think it increases the impact, it increases like the artistic relevance. But you also mentioned this idea of, right, like scale, or like a model that can be replicated in other places. And I think this is then really interesting of like, how do we scale something that is so specific to a place? Like, how do you develop a methodology or a practice that is both portable and specific?
Yes, I think that's really one of the dimensions that we have in common here. And also, I think this idea of collaboration along several dimensions. I mean, we collaborate with the artists, with the local community people, but also with the place itself, sort of. So the place and the nature and the sites, the material of the sites, the architecture, the materiality around us. So it's like this, also this more than human collaboration thing that is also both, as you said, specific and situated in different respects in our case than in your, but that is also, I think, generative and create some synergies here.
Yeah.
Actually, because we talked about that, and it was actually one of the key themes in the roundtable that we had yesterday in one of the sessions, the question about scalability and what goes with that. And I wanted to ask you, how did you? I mean, so obviously the proposal in a way addresses this by the nomadity, or sort of addressing several contexts. But could you tell us a little bit about how you approached? I mean, or what you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's for our project, it was more about like a method that allows you to bring something up from a community in a short period of time, and like the concept of improvised theater. I'm actually really glad that you mentioned this thing too of the more than human entities, because actually like in this picture, right, so you can see me and Mark are the two people on the chairs. We're actually the only human beings in that scene. So everyone else was either like, I think we were on there was like sea level rising. So there were like people who were the sea level. There were people who were kind of like, emotional or other states of the air. And I think that's something that's interesting about improvised theater as well, is that it makes it easy to bring these things in without people expecting like set design or, other things that would require some level of planning. But then that made just the method of the project very adaptive to communities. And even it was interesting because, we had both from the performance side and from the science side, we prepared the process, but not the specific shows. And so sometimes we'd be thinking about like, where are we going? What is likely to come up? Or we would ask our contacts in the community, and they'd be like, oh, there's a bog nearby. There may be some stuff about turf cutting. We're like, okay, sure, we're gonna look at that. But then we would go there, and they would just get up. We would get questions after questions about like pollinators and bees, and it would just be like bees over and over. And if we had prepared a whole thing about bogs, that would not have gone down well. So it was like good to have this responsive methodology. But it is something that actually will be great to see how it develops over the next year and a half of Pacesetters, because we are looking at effectively like the format and the way of producing the show that we created in rural Ireland. How will this work in partnerships with other places that have like this large sort of rural hinterland? And will it have to be adapted? Perhaps. Ireland has a strong tradition of like nomadic storytelling as well, and maybe this is part of what made it successful there, and we might have to change things in other places. But to me, yeah, that question of the scalability, yeah, it's not straightforward to answer, but at the same time, something that has worked in one place probably can be adapted somehow. I don't know, what do you feel?
Yeah, exactly. But I wanted to maybe, because these are the challenging parts, right? And we were also talking about touching in on the value propositions that both of the case studies did. And somehow, if I should look a little bit critically at that, I mean, so at yours.
Oh, great.
No. I mean, that would be
all right, let's go.
So how do you know the scalability in the context of your proposal? To me, in a way, opens up exactly the question about how do you, by what lines do you translate the value of the proposal if you would scale up? Or if not scale up, but scale.
But scale, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you then transport this, address to another site or place or context, is it then the artistic value or societal values, and what does that mean?
Yeah, well, and I think it's interesting with an improv context as well, right? Because a big part of it is humor, and humor is very culturally specific, and like the ways that people interact with humor and with theater. Our plan in terms of scalability is not so much that we take like our existing cast, plop them somewhere new, and try to do the same thing again, but rather that like, say if we were going to Norway, like working with Norwegian scientists, Norwegian improvisers, Norwegian theater makers, passing on the methodology as we have it, but then also being prepared for adaptation. And I think this is something I was aware of in Ireland as well, that like, that if we are going to a community and we don't have people from that community, or we don't have a geographically diverse set of people, it will not feel like it reflects the community. And I think probably similar, right, in terms of some of these post-conceptual art pieces, like they have to feel like they're not from somewhere else, I assume, even if the process is scaled.
For sure. I mean, that's also what came up in the roundtable yesterday somehow, or the dilemmas related to that. I think it's important to touch in on that in the future processes that we engage with as well. I think there was a yellow note coming up for us now.
There was.
Yeah.
In a way, I'm tempted to go over just to see what happens. But yeah, like how did you, I mean, because the value proposition question, right, is tricky. And I think to me, at least for the stuff that we were doing, the community and the social value ended up being very central. Because it was very much, you know, to platform these places and to feel like they were co-creating the project. Like, how did you guys feel in terms of value propositions? Take as long as you want.
We want them to sing.
Oh, she's aggressively singing at me. We can talk about it in the break. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that was juicy. I would say some good matchmaking on our part there. That was a great conversation. All right, we are going to switch the order around a little bit. So I'm going to introduce our next conversation. We have Joe Lockwood, co-founder, co-director of the lab Canal Quasil, the setting for one of our very own real-world labs. For over 25 years, his work has spanned the interface of creative industries, higher education, and government, from founding creative enterprises, contributing to policy development, and co-creating pioneering initiatives. I did, with public and private partners. With all of this experience, he has recently been appointed as Professor of Artistic Entrepreneurship at NTNU. Congratulations. Yeah. All right, so Joe, you can take a seat. You are one of our guests now. We also have, he gave me full permission to tell him what to do today. So we also have Sabrina Rota. Welcome to the stage. She is an economist, expert, and networker in the field of cultural heritage between stakeholders, researchers, society, and government. She's also the director of the International Convention Center for Cultural Heritage Preservation at Fraunhofer and leads the working group for the protection of cultural assets and environmental monitoring. Thank you, Sabrina. And also from Fraunhofer, we have Johanna Leisner. Where is Johanna? There she is. Come up on the stage, Johanna. She's trained as a chemist and material scientist. She's also been working and managing cultural heritage research for over 20 years, focusing on climate change impact on cultural heritage, environmental monitoring of cultural property, and fostering the green transition by implementing the concept of sustainability for green museums and heritage buildings and collections. Achievements include being the German delegate for the Council of Europe Strategy, European Cultural Heritage in the 21st Century, and of the UNESCO World Heritage Expert Group for Climate Change Impacts on Cultural Heritage. Johanna, I don't think you've done enough. All right, so they are going to be discussing fermentation approaches and metabolic processes across disciplines, which is their shared creative case study. So, thank you. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Should we start why we choose the word fermentation? Maybe none of you have an idea because why we use it. And fermentation is a process and we use it as making simple ingredients into things more valuable, which is a transformation. And we believe in that cultural heritage, the culture and creativity sectors, innovation, and societies can make something stronger in combination, and therefore we choose this word as a metaphor, right?
Yeah, as a metaphor. So we have been fermenting things, and there are some olives outside from this year's harvest which are fermenting in weird ways, but really it's thought of as a metaphor, and particularly in relationship to cultural heritage and the way that it's also its immaterial value. It's not necessarily only about preserving the material value of a building or something, but really understanding the things that have been lost or forgotten that might be able to help us understand how to deal with climate transition, and particularly what the role that arts and culture can play in those kind of fermentation as a kind of metaphor for an innovation process, which is about mixing things rather than seeing things as linear processes.
Yeah, and we...
You can have mine.
I take mine.
Okay.
Yeah, and we came about this idea because of the good practice examples we collected in the expert group for climate change and cultural heritage. And it was a fantastic example from Italy, from the Italian Alps, where there were young people, young students from architecture who renovated the traditional huts in the Alpine region, and they have also reintroduced the domestic goat and sheep. This is why we came to the fermentation. And they have restored also the grasslands, because grasslands are the most important storage for carbon dioxide. And they even store carbon dioxide when they have heat waves better than trees, for example, because trees under heat stress release a lot of carbon dioxide. And what these young people did when reintroducing the original goat and sheep, they were using the milk and fermented it into the famous Bitto cheese. And fermentation is a process which has been accompanying our human beings since ages, and we all like to drink once in a while a beer or a wine, which is only made through fermentation. And this was, as Sabrina already outlined, the idea that we are using this case study and the fermentation as the metaphor, how we can bring together not only cultural heritage, then the fermentation process, together with creative ideas to fight against the climate change. And I think this is needed everywhere in the world, and also to give, not only with this reintroducing of the goat and sheep, often we hear that we should not have that many animals, and because they are releasing also methane, but we need them in a moderate number for the grassland, and to make new products out of not only of the milk, but also of the meat and of the sheep and of the wool. And this is a big topic in the Pacesetters project, where there are new products made from the wool, which is now considered in the European Union a toxic waste product. And we have ideas not only making the wool using for knitwear, but also an idea is now to use the wool for as an insulation material, putting it into clay, like they did it in former times with the half-timbered houses. They put straw inside. Maybe we can use the wool, and then we can fight against climate change. On the one side, we are using natural products, and we are also insulating the houses against the heat and against the cold. And it is also a moisture buffer. And so this idea needs to be further developed, to be further fermented, to be taken up on a larger scale.
Exactly. Do you want to carry on?
Yes, we found a fantastic example in the region of Granagorcil in Grazalema. And we found there the goat farm.
We found the goats and the sheep, yes.
And both. And as well what they did out of sheep wool. I mean, not only the wool. Yeah. They got so many other products, like for cosmetics, the lanolin, which is really important for medicine and other uses, and as well wool panels.
Wood pellets for irrigation processes.
Cheese.
So things about as well how we can kind of, I think, it's understanding this kind of idea as well as these processes might be long and take a long period of time and have many complications. So we've been working, we've been doing this kind of iteration between the creative case studies and the need findings of the real world lab. And in that process, we have been hanging out with goat farmers and sheep farmers and various organizations and associations. And one of them is the realization that these are long-term change processes, but they're ones that help us understand actually the kind of the key ecosystem mix. So both in terms of time travel, so like understanding practices from Arabic periods, particularly here in Andalusia, so how it resonates back to kind of nomadic practices, to link to the conversation earlier, which came from Northern Africa, so the role actually of the goats and the sheep within the ecosystem of a mountainous region, that they prevent wildfires, they allow for different forms of irrigation. So there is this whole kind of complex thinking by talking with someone who's been a goat herder for 5 generations of their family, to understand how the goat relates to the moon, how the wool can relate to the land, how it relates to the water systems. So we have been exploring with some very nice people, Pepe, Victor, and other people, how these kind of interactions have got lost, and how they can somehow be brought back to life again through working with creative practices. So some of the things that we've been looking at as well are kind of related to the narrative of the rural, and how the narrative of the rural kind of moves from this deficit model to one about understanding this kind of abundant and latent resources that we've kind of lost an understanding for.
And when Joe mentioned, we had a lot of discussions and very nice, I think, exchanges with people who are living there and working in this area since generations, as you said. And the ideas and also the innovation. I mean, innovation is from generate to generations getting another way of innovation, and we really need to look in the past and taking things up and think about how we can use it in the nowadays times and in the future. And this is also in the innovation and also the artists. We had this fantastic workshop in Guernsey with NTNU and Glasgow.
Glasgow School of Art and NTNU students.
And the students. And we had this fantastic exchanges with them. And the ideas, how we can use that. And it was so inspiring. So we got a lot of inspiration for our creative work.
Exactly. You'll find one of the NTNU students wandering around Mia with the wool. Hilda can point her out. And but really, like combining like a conversation with a goat herder, some weavers who've been using weaving practices for generations, with then speaking with the researchers and the students around how they could start combining, so go this fermentation process of combining the kind of visual art knowledge or the design knowledge with this local knowledge of both living with the ecology of the place, but also the kind of community practices of place. So it was a massive amount of fun, and we had some really good goat as well.
Yes, and it also, we found that this is a policy topic, because we are treating a natural product, wool, as a toxic waste product in the European Union. And I think here the Pacesetters project can make really a substantial contribution to change the minds of the political decision makers when we show them that with the creative ideas behind it, how we can transform or ferment the toxic waste product, which is not really a toxic waste product, into something valuable, fighting against the climate change. And I think here we must be in a very good dialogue with the decision makers, and I hope tomorrow when we will see the Vice President of the European Commission. She was the former Minister for the Environment in Spain.
Yes.
And maybe we can implant in her this idea how we can transform and ferment products which are thousands of years natural products. Now they became toxic waste products, and we are going back again that it is a valuable natural product, and that can help us how we can fight against the climate change. And these are exactly the innovative ideas which come out when we put together sheep herder, goat herder, creative artists, scientists, material scientists, engineers, because also the machines they have been using to produce the pellets, they came from the Czech Republic. They were especially adapted to process the wool into pellets, which is not an easy thing. And that shows that we need to see the things more holistically and bring really the people together, not online, really on site, that you can feel and grab the wool. And so, yeah, that's it.
No, I think it's absolutely right, and there is a direct link to basically Pacesetters being able to give these policy recommendations through demonstrating these very real examples, and they're real places and real people. It's not some kind of abstract statistic. It's like, no, this is really a place, and these are really people, and these things are really happening, and they bring all these different things together. Goat herders and biology.
And we have
biologists.
not talked about the health aspect and the well-being
No,
aspect.
we've got more.
That is,
Yeah.
we talk later.
Yes. We're not going to let you sing.
Okay, we are on time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Hello, hello, it's me again. I swap roles now. Apparently I'm very good at multitasking. I'm clearly confused person. So I would very much like to now invite the next speed dating couple to speak freely in front of us about their endeavors. So Vikash and Florian. So Vikash is COO and co-founder of Eventwood, with 15 years experience as a researcher and project manager. He has been project manager, technical manager, and also main contributor in several research council and EU-supported projects in air traffic management, energy, robotics, smart city domains on topics of cybersecurity and risk management. Welcome, Vikash. Florian, as the lead coordinator of Pacesetters, is empowering all of us, as well as other artists and cultural actors, to contribute to just transitions. He is also Professor of Art Theory and Documentary Practices at NTNU and the Director of the New Institute of Creativity at the University of Glasgow. Galway. I'm confusing my G's now. I do it all the time. Anyway, welcome. Great to have you both.
Thank you. I think we are a very odd couple here.
Yeah.
So, I don't know where you found that, the bio. So as you can see, like I have a completely different background. Cybersecurity, safety, and critical infrastructure. And software engineering, of course. And now I'm here working with you guys to measure the value and impact of culture.
Yeah, but I think it is really interesting because you bring in a completely different perspective. Not that this perspective is particularly new. Yeah? We know all sorts of matrices, how the impact of art and culture is supposed to be measured, no? And we consider them as more or less flawed. But this is not the problem. The problem is that they're practically useless, because the information and the data that is gathered serves purposes that are not connected or embedded in the creative processes. It's a kind of legitimation post festum, no? So once you have received some funding, once you have organized a big event, in order to excuse, apologize, legitimate, or account for this form of funding, you usually produce some kind of report, no, that highlights the impact in relationship to the good intentions that were used in order to make the proposal or the funding application in the first place. I think the project that you are working on is radically different in this, not in the sense that it is trying to reappropriate the metadata, the user-generated data, the location data that are gathered by participants and audiences of cultural activities, but reappropriates it for creative purposes. This was the idea of this case study, and we are very, very excited that you joined us from let's say, not generic CCI perspective, but from a perspective of data science. So can you explain a little bit more what you are currently working on?
Yeah, so I think this is more than a project. I mean, what we are working on. I mean, this is an innovation project funded by EIT Culture and Creativity. And the goal of the project is that we would be delivering a market-ready product, actually, yeah, and a location intelligence product for specifically tailored for culture and events. And when we talk about location intelligence, what we are trying to do over there is that we gather multi-source, high-quality data, of course. So mobility, that means that we are collaborating with telco operators, for example, Telia in Nordics. Spending, where we are looking into transactions, social behavior. Weather is, of course, very important in country like Norway. You know, bad weather means no people outside. Yeah, so we gather all this data, and of course, through our algorithms, we look into providing deeper insights or analytics of crowd behavior during events or when they are actually attending a cultural offer and so forth. Yeah, that's what we are doing in short. Yeah.
So in that sense, it's a kind of inverted case study because we already have the business model and the advanced venture, but we are trying to test and experiment with it in the context of the real-world laboratory. So it's basically the other way around, and I think we have here really exciting opportunities. I mean, most obviously with the Galway International Arts Festival, but also with a small town like Genalgasil, which, by the way, also as one of the 10 most beautiful cities, towns or villages in Spain, has free access to this data from Telefonica.
I think what I'm also very interested in, I mean, we have had yesterday some discussions about, you know, like the value of culture and creativity, cultural heritage. But at the same time, we have been discussing lack of access to the budget. For me, it's very weird, you know, like, so maybe we could look into, like, okay, what kind of impact, I mean, documenting what kind of an impact culture has on real estate, transportation. I mean, I can give you an example of a Norwegian Airport Authority. We had a dialogue with them, and they said, like, Vikash, so we really want to understand this cultural tourists. For us, these guys are black box. So it looks like, yeah, the airlines have data, but when it comes to us, we don't know what they are doing as soon as they leave the terminal. And they are working closely with Oslo, Visit Oslo, and regional development actors to attract these cultural tourists to the Oslo region. So that itself says that what you are doing and the audience and visitors you are bringing in, or that you can bring, is of tremendous commercial value. So I think this is something we are very much interested to work along with you, you know, like the offers or the interventions you make, how this is changing the crowd flow. And yesterday we also discussed about diverting the crowd flow from very hectic urban areas to rural areas. So I think that's where we can help. Yeah.
So what would it be that one can do with your platform, and how can it be useful for cultural and creative purposes?
Yeah, so I can give a couple of examples going back to the use cases. So we have one project with the Oslo Culture of Agency. So they give 30 million euro per year to cultural things, including events. They would like to know which of those events they sponsor has real impact. You know, for them, we are delivering these automated impact reports providing them concrete evidence, okay, this event has this kind of an impact, whether it is economical or social, it depends on what they would like to measure. That's straightforward. For an event organizer, so I can give, in the same region, I can give the example of Pride event. So when we spoke with them, we thought that they would be more interested to measure their social impact, but it was completely opposite. They said that we believe we are the Norway's largest event when it comes to economic impact. So can you help us to provide those insights? Because once we have that data, we could convince the businesses or the streets, allow us to go through, allow our events to happen, because we are more than social inclusive. We actually bring a lot of money into the, so that is two concrete. One is B2G or government, and the other one is like businesses who are interested.
So what I find this example is really interesting. You have another example with a sports bar?
Yeah, the sports festival, right? So this is a extremely commercial event that happens in Oslo, downtown Oslo. They have these large screens projecting Champions League, whatever, the big football events. They make quite a lot of money, and we thought that they would be interested in economic impact, but rather they said we want to know the social impact, because we believe we are the most socially inclusive event in the whole Norway. And they said, like, why you're making money? And they said, well, the problem is we get zero funding from the city. Second, we are being asked to move away from this area where they're organizing event to some other location, and that is actually being given to the Pride event. So yeah, this is what we are doing.
So I think what I really find fascinating, that we can not only find out about these kind of paradoxical effects, no? I mean, that are usually called impact. Now we think about impact as a direct linear causality, which I think with the data and with the insights that you are developing, we can turn this into much more complex models that are full of paradoxes, full of irony, and full of unexpected effects. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm new to this startup world, right? So I have been talking with some entrepreneurs who really made it. And then said, like, how can I make data sexy? So it's very hard to pitch. And then anyway, the guy said, like, first of all, you have to solve really a pain point for your customers. And then he also said that make those customers a star. And I think that stick with us, So they are like in a small town in Sarpsborg, a small town called Sarpsborg in Norway, 50,000 people. There's this one-and-off lady, a company working on visitor and city development, and then now she started to use our data, our tools, explaining to the city, like, the events we are doing here, the artists we are bringing here is actually changing the crowd flow. People who are actually from a richer area are coming and consuming these offers in a area that is being rejuvenated. So she's presenting this to the municipalities, to the real estate people, to the transportation. I mean, in Norway we have all this, parking becoming expensive. So she's telling, like, don't do that, because it's actually changing the crowd flow. So make it free, we will have an event there. This is the impact we are bringing in. So I think that these use cases are very interesting for us and making real impact.
And is your platform also capable of identifying or registering the carbon footprint of these events?
To some extent, yes. So what we can do is, we know the crowd flow, like, okay, 100 people are coming from that region to this region. And the telco operators can provide like, okay, 50% of them are taking the train, this many percentage by car, and yeah. So from that we can provide carbon footprint, but not everything. So I don't think we need to do that because there exists other solutions. But I was reading somewhere that when it comes to events, 75% of the carbon footprint is related to the audience transport. So just for those metrics, we can provide data. I think that's good enough. Mm.
And I think this data also become particularly valuable when we combine this kind of hard, so-called objective data that are provided by telecom companies, by credit card providers, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I mean, so to say, unquestionable objective data. No, if we combine this with the much more subjective data that is the result of interviews, surveys, and kind of qualitative data. No? So I think, and with the aim to regain control of this data and use it for creative purposes, or to strengthen the cultural and creative endeavors that are in the first place generating this data. No? I mean, it is a similar situation with like with generative AI, which is usually seen as a threat to creativity, yeah, which is obviously the case, but it's already the wrong way of thinking about it. It is the cultural and creative practices that are generating these platforms or these generative AI tools. Without the cultural activities, nothing like this would exist. Yeah? Yes. So it's not exactly a chicken egg problem. No, I think it's really a question of reclaiming ownership of the data that cultural and creative activities are producing, and figuring out how can we use this or make use of this data in an intelligent, smart, accountable, transparent, but most importantly, in a creative way.
So long. Great. Reclaiming ownership of data and making data sexy. I like it. Okay. So next up, we have the wonderful Zoe Romano. Zoe is a craftivist, digital and fabrication strategist, and lecturer focused in social innovation, women in tech, open design. She develops projects around e-textiles and digital fabrication in different contexts, and co-founded one of the first makerspaces in Milan, We Make, focused on design and fashion. And Zoe will be in dialogue with Max Gilgenman. Come on up to the stage, Max. You're most welcome. Max is a renowned sustainability expert, advisor, and facilitator with a focus on fashion and textiles, with very cool fashion himself. Amongst several other roles, he's co-founder of Forn, the Berlin Fashion Hub, Germany's first hub for the journey towards a net positive fashion industry. Yeah. I think just...
Hello? Yes. Thank you. So it's really a pleasure to be here and finally somehow having a conversation around the case study that I created in the past months around digital knitting as a counter concept to fast fashion. So just to have some kind of sensing of the audience, who knows the difference between weaving and knitting, and what is the main difference? Can you raise your hand if you know? Okay, so good. So the main difference that is important for me regarding circularity is that weaving is a matrix of a warp and weft, and knitting is one yarn that is interlooped, so it has the potential to be undone. And so actually you can go back to the yarn instead of shredding the fibers. So it's really interesting as a technology. So in the past, like 40 years, digital technology really had a huge impact on the knitwear industry since the early 80s or something like that, because new machine came to be. And the concept of digital textile microfactory is only now emerging as an alternative to mass production, and this approach could be face better the challenges of the climate transition because it enables distributed manufacturing, because you start from a file and this file can be sent to different machines that are territorial and actually could enable rural communities to really produce using also local materials, as we saw before. So this potential to transform the industry toward more economically and sustainable community-centric practices is significant. It has a significant connection to local tradition and heritage. So it's a radically different strategy emerging from the usually the way we think of textile as and knitwear and making garments or other stuff made with textile. From a model of create, produce, and sell, we can move to a model of create, sell, and then produce. So it's a kind of on-demand production. So local supply chains, digital tools, fast iteration, less waste, it's a kind of viable alternative to fast fashion. But why in these 30 years this didn't happen yet? So there are some bottlenecks. There are some ways of like preventing this to happen. And so somehow, Max, before we dive into our dialogue, could you just share how the VORN, the lab, emerged and came to be funded, and why it's important also the action of public administration to found some experiments that usually don't have a market there to be ready, but is based on other type of values like sharing knowledge and enabling risks somehow. Thank you.
Yes. First of all, thanks for having me. I have to do one comment on the knitting. I think one of the reasons is because knitting is not so great with polyester. And because with knitwear you feel it on your skin way more, etc. So in that sense, you don't have this cheap route that you have with weaving. I think that unfortunately is one of the huge reasons. And we heard about toxic materials before, and I think, well, polyester is the actual one. But Fawn, well, it is a long journey actually. I mean, I'm part of the Berlin fashion scene, and I've been building like the more, let's say, sustainable orientated part of that for many years. And there was since probably 15 years the idea that there should be, or longer before I even lived in Berlin, the idea to have some kind of a meeting place. And we lobbied for it with politicians, with local kind of industry, etc. for probably 10 years. In between we had one feasibility study with the lovely Marte that you also know, who's now one of the co-CEOs of Fawn. So at the end, I think a lot of lucky things came together, for us lucky at least. Finally, maybe some politicians found some money and thought like it's worth to put into something like this, and we were there. And then the pandemic came, and actually Berlin was flooded a bit with money, and suddenly there was a bigger budget, and then there was a EU tender, and we applied for that with a coalition, and we won it. And so after kind of, well, one must say they tried to write the tender for us, I mean, as things go, because of the long period of preparation. But yeah, still, we had to apply and go through official process. And yeah, so the starting point also of FORN is publicly funded. I mean, that's...
And it's also a co-op.
Yes, well, that was our choice.
Yeah.
But this is something where we said, like, yeah, from the beginning, I mean, we want to work differently. We want to showcase that it's not, we're not there to go into hyper fast fashion, into hyper commercialness, etc. We explicitly want to be a commercial space because I think we are important to find solutions that work in this commercial world. But we wanted to limit that clearly, and so that there's no way you can kind of go into the wrong direction. So yeah, we founded a cooperative, and on that process also for me that was a lovely learning journey, because I wasn't aware that this is one of the oldest legal kind of frameworks for companies in Germany also. So it's been there forever, it's just not been so used. And yeah, it's a bit more complicated.
Yeah, so preparing our dialogue, we had like a call, and we discussed about how we need a kind of balanced approach in fashion, emphasizing both long-lasting garments and the importance of also short product cycles inspired by nature. So with the local approach, we focus on local wool for digitally fabricated knitwear, which has an expected life cycle much longer than fast fashion, because the quality is usually higher, not just for the materials, but also the kind of the way you work with it. It lasts longer. In his way of working, the knitting machine makes objects that are higher quality, but we also need we cannot just produce long-lasting objects, but we were discussing that you express this necessity of not just focusing solely on long-lasting, but also arguing there is a new also approach in exploring new materials that have a different life cycle. So let's not just go back on being too slow, but there could be an option that is also sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too broad here, but for me, there is a flawed issue with the overall circularity strategy of the European Union, which is very long-lasting orientated, which is totally logic and in many ways makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't represent life in its full facet, because fast fashion is there also because people, I think, are curious, and humans are very funny, huh? I mean, we always want something new, but then not too new, but like maybe the same, but a little bit different color next year, etc. So, but these things are very natural driven, I think. I don't think we're going to get rid of it. I also wouldn't want, I mean, a society that is all in the same color. It's not my society in that sense. But yeah, so I think it's just, that's why I'm happy to be here also, because I feel we need a different way of imagining these solutions, and we always, at the moment, driven through the industry, are tending to be very in this system thinking, which is already better than other ways, but it's still, it opens up so many spaces for going into the wrong direction, ignoring spaces that need to be explored to find the better solutions, etc. And so in that sense, I'm very clearly on don't just go for longevity. Like, let's also look into solutions that are like the leaves falling down, I mean, following the cradle-to-cradle ideas, and then they become part of the system again. And yeah, inspired by nature, we can make up new solutions. There's plenty of new materials. There's also, I think, one of the most exciting streams for the bit longer future vision is bringing food value chains and fashion value chains together, because of all these natural materials that are there that could make fibers, could make materials for the industry. So in that sense, we need to be very open, I think. We need to also have, we heard it yesterday, quick solutions for some things, but let's not, disenable us to have the better solutions for the longer term future.
Yes, so also in Italy, I'm based in Milan, we have this tendency of like thinking about, it was more like 10 years ago, as something that is more boring. You have less choice, or you have less colors, and you have to be more like dull. But actually, this has changed in my practice of craftivism. We try to change the way we reach younger audiences, in the sense of we cannot just say, stop buying that, but we need to change the feeling of excitement of buying into something else. And so the playing with knitting machine, the playing with repairing, the friendliness and the happiness of doing things together, we see that we can move the excitement from buying to do something and make something with your hands, and is more fulfilling, actually. And these places that become like communities of making, of doing together, can change this psychological effect.
Yeah, totally. It's just the interesting thing is still then now, for example, with Fawn, we have one of these spaces, but people are very busy. They can't even use the full potential of the energy in that possible room, because they quite often they are, it's really interesting to see. I feel like this must have been, at least in my experience 10 years ago, really it was still different. But now, even this moments of like, okay, have this lucky coffee chat or something, they're rarer and rarer, because everybody is so in their own hamster wheel every day. And so, yeah, in theory, it's still, but I feel it's extra hard at the moment to make this happen.
Yeah. Is true. And so also in makerspaces, usually there was this paradox in which the people that had the money to have a membership in the makerspace didn't have time to use the makerspace, and the people that didn't have money couldn't afford a membership. So that is the paradox of makerspaces. And so just to go to an end to our thing, but in the case study of digital knitting, during the interviews, it emerged the importance of collaboration, driving sustainability in the local supply chain for putting into action a new type of fashion industries focused on relations and economical proximity. So small designers, usually they behave like big companies in competing instead of working together in become a one front and working together towards a new vision. Just briefly, do you agree with this?
Yeah, totally. I think, at the end, there's no one solution. There's a sea of solutions that we need in ecosystems, and knitwear is one of the very, very interesting ones. And when it's so hands-on and you can understand it so well, and there's so many things that I think make it a really great example where people can, if we experiment with that, then we have a really interesting space for friction between kind of processes, between designers and makers, and also the more commercial sides. And then we can come to new solutions, I think, and that's super important. And there's not so many pockets like this. I think there's a few, product pockets. Denim, for example, is a material. You can do a lot of interesting things around it towards sustainability. So there's a few of these experimental pockets, I think, in the fashion industry that one should explore. And where you have so much interesting points of being in a really interesting friction with the consumers, but also with the designers, with all the managers of the value chains, etc. And suddenly, you might have that better solution ahead. And I think we heard it yesterday, to push innovation is a difficult thing. You need to have lucky moments and special encounters that cannot be planned. And for that we need to go into experimentation.
So thank you. I explored this in the case study, and I will publish all the interviews and the complete case study. So if you're interested on the topic, just follow the Pacesetters website. Thank you. Thank you, Max.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Max and Zoe. I think Joe had to run out for an interview, so I will introduce myself because I will be in dialogue next with Hilda. So my name's Michelle Palmer. I'm an interdisciplinary performance artist, human rights and climate activist, and I'm currently a PhD researcher in theater and performance studies. That's probably not a surprise from this morning. I'm at the University of Galway, and my current PhD research explores ecofeminist and eco-soma practices which engage with natural cycles, social and ecological issues, as well as forms of resistance in dramaturgy and performance. So I'll speak a little bit on that with Hilda. So Hilda Rebekson, if you want to join me up here on the stage, pick your seat. She's also a PhD candidate in artistic research at the Trondheim Academy of Fine Art at NTNU, and the leading researcher in the creative case study Investigations into Circular Aesthetics of New Materials and Artificial Biology Systems. So her research straddles both the Faculty of Architecture and Design and the Faculty of Engineering, which is really interesting. And before starting her PhD, she trained and worked as a fashion designer, a design consultant, and fashion entrepreneur, trend analyst, and design tutor. So I'm changing roles now. New character. So Hilda, I'm excited to be in conversation with you.
Likewise. Oh,
I think you have to turn the button. This one. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Likewise, Michelle. Thank you very much for the introduction.
Yeah. So we've had some lovely conversations about the work that we do, and you have some of your work here out in the halls. Hopefully everybody has taken a look. If you haven't, you'll have many chances to today. But you have your wool and kind of pieces from Wooltopia, and you have your loom. And so something that I'm curious about, from what I've read that you've done is this aspect of this three-dimensional loom and thinking of it as this collective thinking apparatus. So can you talk a little bit about that and why you've chosen a 3D loom?
Yes. Thank you for the question. I think first of all, it is, I would like to encourage everyone to weave on this loom today and tomorrow, if you get the chance, on a very practical level. And then on another level, I think it can be understood as a boundary object. And furthermore, it, I think, speaks of, or it's a response, in addition to what's been said here already about the challenges of wool being categorized as a waste product, it also wants to sort of visualize or make visible wool, basically, and the value of wool. And I think the three-dimensional wool kind of helps to give space and visibility to wool as a transformational material, but it also suggests perhaps new ways of organizing and producing. So it's sort of tapping into maybe a unconventional mode, unconventional modes of production. Yeah. And then just commenting on what's been said earlier about also the difference between knitwear and woven materials. My background is from fashion design, but I've always been quite sort of admired knitwear and been slightly sort of envious of both fully fashioned knitwear and three-dimensional knitwear, which is a much more kind of commercialized and commercialized technology that actually works, whereas 3D weaving is maybe a much more obscure and other form of producing. So you're making the textile while shaping the textile in a sense. Yeah. So I think that's my fascination with the 3D loom. Yeah. And then I could also say that I think because I'm in this kind of cross-faculty PhD, I am quite interested in the kind of the differences between intra, cross, multi, inter, and transdisciplinarity, and then I could almost think of the loom as some sort of a expression of these different dimensions. I also have a inspiration called Flatland, which we spoke about yesterday, actually, which is a speculative novel from 1884 by Edwin A. Abbott. So that's the kind of inspiration behind it as well. Yeah. And then I just wanted to say very quickly, the image behind us here is from a farm outside Trondheim, a colleague, PhD from the architecture and design faculty, who has a farm with the spelso, which is one of the fibers I'm showing outside. Yeah, and then but back to the kind of different disciplinaries. I am also thinking about we are thinking about how we can ask within the Wooltopia, which I forgot to actually mention. The Wooltopia Advanced Venture is kind of the exhibition out there, and where we're also wanting to ask what would wool do, or what would sheep do? Which might be difficult to find the answer to, but it also brings us into a sort of more than human transdisciplinary, I don't know, something, and which I think also brings me back to why we are having this conversation, which has to do with wool. Well, it has to do with agency in a more than human context. Yeah. And so I would like to ask you if you can talk about your case study and how you would explain, if you could explain more about the eco-dramaturgy and how you would, how do you explore eco-dramaturgy in your work, and how you do this in a sort of artistic sensory practice. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, the creative case study that I'm leading with Pacesetters, the formal title is Co-Agency of Emerging Hybrid Human-Machine Assemblages. But just through a lot of different inspirations and conversations with the team, even taking inspiration from people like Donna Haraway and Jane Goodall, I almost came to the belief that in order to start thinking of our co-agency and relationships between humans and machines, we really have to get a grip on understanding our relationships and connections with non-humans in general, and with ecological elements, with animals, any types of non-humans. And so that's where the kind of eco-dramaturgy poured into the creative case study. So yeah, maybe I'll explain first what dramaturgy as a term means, because I know even being in theater, I was a bit confused of what exactly that captured. So I learned from the amazing Jeannie O'Hare, who she actually trained as a sculptor. Which really, feeds into the work of dramaturgy in an interesting way. So she trains as a sculptor, and then, now she's this famous dramaturg who's helped productions like Hamilton and such. And so I got to learn from her, and basically came to the understanding that dramaturgy is world building, it's shaping and forming a piece, a performance. So it's looking at the themes, it's looking at the context, the characters and what they represent. And so then eco-dramaturgy brings in that ecological element to it. So you might have ecological themes, you might be thinking in like natural process ways of thinking, having characters represent, elements of nature or ecological issues in some way. So, so an interesting way to explore that I'm bringing into the workshop that I'll be doing today, this afternoon, where we'll start with kind of ecosoma practices, which was developed by this performance scholar Petra Kuppers. And so that's basically having this heightened awareness of your body and your connection to the environment through sensory ways. And then through that, looking at shows like Hadestown and Wicked, and looking at the ecological themes, what the characters represent, and the world building there, and then thinking of our own contexts and the social and ecological issues that we see that are interconnected in a kind of climate justice way. And how can we tell a story? How can we give voice to ecological elements like sheep or even wool? You've asked the question, like, what would wool say if wool could speak? So yeah, I'm really curious to explore that with whoever is there later today, and just really connect everything and see what kind of story we can tell if we can create a musical or a play concept about what we're passionate about here. Yeah, and so I wanna kind of weave back into the even like ecodramaturgy aspects of Wooltopia. So we've had conversations before of this, and and the kind of like journey from sheep to wool and revaluing and reproducing in valuable ways. So can you talk a little bit about that for a brief amount of time? I feel like we might have a little bit of time if you want to dive in.
A little bit of time. So I think in Wooltopia, which I don't know if will be your topic later, or will it be something else? Maybe, yeah. But within the advanced venture Wooltopia, we've kind of been imagining that this is a sort of micro mill, micro lab, cross-disciplinary space where it's architecturally inspired by the wool fiber, with its different properties, where you might have the outside of the fiber, the cuticle scales. Their role is to be they're hydrophobic, so you could think of that as a role of being a character maybe in your play with its property, and it also is the reason why the wool might felt if it's subjected to water and some sort of mechanical movement. So it's kind of just how if these can become sorts of the components of the wool fiber, could become characters in a play, for instance. You
can shape and give voice.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Well, I know we did start behind time, so I will cut myself off and give space to our next speakers. So thank you, Hilda. I can't wait to talk more.
Likewise. Thank you very much.
We're whispering to each other into the mic. So
it's because it's a little secret that we have between each other.
Some gossip.
Yeah, so my apologies. Michelle had to jump in for herself because the radio was calling me. So, because I'm the Spanish speaker locally, apparently. So, so our final speed dating collective to join us up here on the stage are Sunke, Jim, and Adam. If you could wander this way, and while you're wandering, I'll say things about you.
4 of us.
4 of you?
Yeah.
Excellent. More. Okay, so Sunke is a media theoretist who writes, teaches, and curates with a focus on collaborative arts and technology, research. His current research concerns anticipation, collective intelligence, design, and documentary aesthetics. Hello, hello. Jim. Hello, hello. is Established Professor of History at the University of Galway. His engagement with Pacesetters contributes to his work on the comparative history of transitions and the role of creative practice plays in defining new horizons for communicative action. He is currently leading the CCS on game engines as creative frameworks. Fantastic. Adam is a passionate internet technologist, pioneer and advocate with over 25 years of experience and research in human-centered technology. He currently works with Dyn Foundation on a variety of projects and as our very own data manager. On top of several other digital and technical achievements, Adam designed the most recent version of the Pocket FM emergency communication system deployed in crisis areas and IDP camps in the Middle East and Africa. Oh, I say. They didn't give me any text about you. I'm really sorry. Do you want to say something about yourself?
I'm anonymous. Yes.
I think that's so much better way to go. Yeah. Anyway, fantastic to have you all here.
Well, hi, thank you. I feel like I won a game show that I got called up to the stage. I'm Becky Schutt. I come from the land of opportunity, with apologies. And I think one of the reasons I'm a friend of, colleague of Jim's, and I sit on the board of an organization called Arts and Homelessness International. So I think that's one of the reasons I'm sitting here. We work with about 400 organizations around the world with people who are homeless. Half our board is homeless or has been homeless. Half our staff is or has been homeless. So to earlier points about the structure of boards and governance is very important to how the work then turns out. And I'm captain of a project called Business Class, where I make people fly on a fake airplane and talk about society.
Okay, we're not going to explain anything. We're going to do a game. But you know the game. The game is called Choriskis. Modernist artists have been using this for at least 100 years. So, other than Becky, who is therefore the hero, because she will meet these non-player characters, who are us, right? We had a meeting, and we had a beautiful discussion about game engines. And I'm going to say nothing more. I'm not going to grab what that meant. And there were a whole load of terms came out of that, which are all hidden here in these Post-its. And I'm going to reach across to Sunke, and I'm going to say, pull one of those, and you've got to use that as your prompt for the first thing you're going to say. Just pull one of them off. And if you can read my handwriting, there you go.
All right, it says, I need to turn this on.
Yeah, turn it on.
All right, this one says, multiverse of possible technical solutions. That's my prompt?
That's your prompt.
All right. Just quickly, who's a gamer in this? Oh, I mean, all kinds of games, all board games included. Playing with the kids. All right, so everyone. Good, good. All right, we thought about this because it's a little bit out of sync with the woolliness of the previous conversations, but we'll get back to this organic feeling eventually, is that game engines are complex software solutions that help us create immersive environments. And what's interesting about this is that we talk so much about scenario development, multiple futures, quantum, everything is happening at the same time everywhere. In gaming, we have technically implemented this. So we know how to do this. We know how to build software that can create environments that shape, structure, and sustain our individual and collective agency in interesting ways at the same time. And this is part of what intrigued us about the topic of game engines.
Yeah. And if anyone, when other people are thinking, what's beautiful about that is that this creative case study is really about transition. It's less focused on climate. And the future, as we know, is open. But it's incredibly difficult to represent that openness in most of our creative and cultural forms. Game engines literally are objects that enforce that openness of the future toward us. If you think of them like organic or human quantum computers, where different states are in place all the time. Arthur, do you want anything on this one? Adam? No.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's do another one.
Yeah.
Go.
No.
Yeah.
So we keep the game going.
We can keep the game going too.
I don't know.
Oh, there's a game.
I love games.
It's a game.
Well, let's continue with the game while I talk about engines of games.
Pull one of those.
And yep, okay. The reveal moment. Okay, my special secret written card here says, against identity. So what can I riff off this? It's interesting, I think, in some manners that machines and game engines can mass produce and give opportunities that tend to struggle against individual identities. So we have that on one part. However, we also have other types of machines that we are dealing with apart from gaming engines, and this is the external world that we have of the engines of value creation in general, whether that be systems of capitalism or exchange, etc., which can often dilute a sense of identity and so on. And I think it's interesting and playful to start reflecting on the modern forms of identity in terms of what defines us and what defines us both only in our own eyes and the eyes of others. And this is a complexity that cannot totally be digitally captured, but in playful ways, perhaps technology can be a mediator to help us understand the identities of ourselves, both individually and collectively.
Go for one.
$100 million. I won. No. Mother machine. Well, I suppose that there are mothers in this room, and everyone in this room has one thing in common. At least we all have mothers. Mm-hmm. So it's hard not to think about feminine characteristics, I suppose, and machine. Perhaps in the past we think of it as more masculine, but also we know both of those are the opposite to be true. So I suppose it's thinking about structures and fluidity.
Just because you weren't at...
I wasn't at... I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, but you're doing great. But a game engine is a machine that gives birth to other games.
Yes.
So there's this whole notion of natality, of novelty. The game engine doesn't determine any game. It merely offers a set of protocols out of which a game can be constructed. And even the game itself can be madly open. And I think in our conversation, we thought this notion of the strong relationship between game engines and natality isn't something that a lot of people have spoken about, but especially because I know there's some people very interested in feminist and eco-criticism. That is a manner into that I think wouldn't have been madly apparent.
Yes.
Yes.
And I suppose it makes me think of who are the two people that had sexual relations to create these babies, right? And so who's in the room that gets to decide who gets to create the engine in the first place?
Yeah.
I might can I do this, which is, I know since we're improvising and there's an improviser in the front row, I will take just a chair up. Yes. I'm going to, sure, no, because then where will you sit on the floor? But I suppose I just want to put a chair here. Don't put on the floor. I'll stand over here. Because there are people in this world that aren't in this room, right? So who is not here getting to sit on the stage, and why am I getting to sit on a stage?
Okay.
And so who are the parents and who are the people that decide what the structures are?
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent.
Can I go sit down now?
No, you're stuck. Okay. I'm gonna pull one. Oh, value flows. That was nice. So game engines have been developed to create value, right? The people who built Unity, right, want to make money. But what's really interesting is that game engines are constantly subverted. The most successful petition in the history of the European Union, success gathered by the number of people who actually bothered to then write in about the petition, was a petition got going by two gamers in Cologne who got annoyed that the game platform that they liked to play was being closed down, right? And they petitioned the European Union that it would make a rule that if you put a video game into the European market, you could never close the platform. Now, this is one of those, they didn't know what they were doing, but it was kind of mind-blowing because they made no claim to own the platform. Wasn't that you transferred property, right? They made no claim to own the IP in the platform, but they claimed that, the claim was that gamers had an interest which should be publicly represented. And then they made it even worse for all the people in Brussels by making no mechanism whatsoever by how the hell this would be done, right? And I think 1.7 million went in there, which is my best example of subversion of a gamey approach. We got 2 minutes. One more.
All right, just a quick note on identity. I guess on this one, I'm also with Nietzsche, who said, kind of watch out. Somebody wants you to identify who you are. Those tend to be the people who want to punish you for something, And this is how we use identity, in systems, authority, etc. And the other thing is that I think this is a beautiful image of the kind of economy that hopefully Joe and his colleagues will build. Because if you think about musical chairs, there's always less chairs, fewer chairs than people. And if there's an image for a regenerative economy, is that there's always an extra chair. Okay. And I think it's a beautiful image to say, this is what we have to build. This is almost a systems design schema, is to say, how do we do this? It doesn't matter whether it's human or non-human or whatever, but the extra chair is what gives us abundance or regeneration. And I think it's something very concrete and tangible.
Okay, superb. And we will stop there and not make Michelle sing again. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. That was a fun experiment in using a speed dating matchmaking style for presenting some research. So now, what are we going to do next, Joe?
I think we're going to move into the next session, but people might want to take a break. Yes. You could. I will listen. I'm now. You're in charge. I just do as you tell me.
Okay, so please order a 5 minutes break.
5-minute break, everyone. Okay.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry for disappearing. The radio was calling me for
unexpected time.
That's fine.
Yeah. It's okay.
They were like, it's live. I'm like, oh, fuck.
I was like, oh, I have to.
Okay, everyone, welcome to the session of the Real World Lab. We will be beginning. Okay, I will go off the stage. I will leave the floor to Florian to introduce the concept of the Real World Lab and the characteristic of three labs we have in our project. Then there will be a presentation of the Real World Lab one by one, and then a plenary discussion how the Real World Lab are testing and checking our creative concept coming from the work package one. So, Florian, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Marta. And I just wanted to use the opportunity to connect and bridge a little bit between this wonderful session on the creative case studies that we just had, which really, I mean, in a certain way, this is about the work that we have been doing in the first half of this project. And I think it worked really, really well with this speed dating format. Yeah? I mean, to exchange and to also improvise the results instead of having 12 half-an-hour PowerPoint presentations in a row. So I think this was really an overwhelming impression, no, of very specific research in very specific cases. This is where we chose this format, case studies. And then I remember from the kickoff meeting, no, when we had these case studies existed only as headlines, no, with very abstract titles. And I mean, we had lots of discussion. How can we make these abstract claims? How can we fill them with concrete ideas and concrete projects? And I think this has really worked out very well. And we are only half through, and the question is now, how do we extend this and how do we involve more expertise, diverse expertise on these different topics and on these different cases? We have, I mean, what looks now like an abundance of very specific and very concrete and dispersed practices, we have bundled them according to three main topics, yeah, or strands. Yeah. The first strand is decentralized architectures or distributed architectures, where we really want to look into the power of decentralized structures. Yeah. The second strand is collective intelligences, which we also see as a kind of counter concept to what is currently coined as AI. Yeah. So we are interested in collective intelligences, a different kind of use of the data and the information that is generated through these advanced practices that we are not only researching, that we are actually carrying out. This is the idea of practice-based research. And the third strand is shared creativity. And this means, in our understanding, that creativity is not an individual feature or asset, no, that belongs to one person who is creative as opposed to other persons who are not creative. No, creativity is really a collective asset. No? It's always shared. It might more belong to places or locations rather than to individual persons or owners. Yeah. So it makes no sense for us to talk about creative class or a creative hotspot as if creativity could be assigned to an individual. We think it's a collective feature, and we have to strengthen this understanding of creativity as something that is shared among many people, many places, and what we call human and non-human or more than human agency. So I wanted to kind of revisit this original idea from the proposal, which I think is working out very well. But we have, in the concept of Pacesetters, introduced another phase or a second phase where we want to implement and test some of these case studies according to the 3 strands in 3 real-world laboratories. So it's not only about desk research and academic writing and scientific journal articles where we publish our results. We want to implement and test and evaluate as much as possible the main outcomes or the ideas or the hypotheses that are developed in these case studies. And here we were incredibly lucky, I think, that we were able to propose 3 different real-world laboratories in Genalguacil, in Galway, and in Nova Huta. And what we were not really aware is that this is already a really impressive scaling or strategy of scaling. We have Genalguacil, which is a small town with 450 inhabitants in the middle of the mountains, and we will visit it on Saturday. We have Galway as a kind of mid-sized city that are particularly important in the context of the climate transition. And we have Nova Huta as a kind of, we call it peri-urban settlement, no? That is very young. Genalguacil has 3,000 years of history. No? Nova Huta was founded in the 70 years ago, exactly 70 years ago. Yeah, so in the mid-1950s. Yeah, but it's a whole district outside of Krakow with 500,000 inhabitants. Yeah, so it's 3 radically different levels of scale, but also these are not the usual places where you might suspect the kind of creative hotspots, no? Like Amsterdam, Berlin, Barcelona. This is where the creatives are flocking together and living downtown. We wanted to look at the power of culture and creativity, artistic research, artistic practices off the beaten track. And I'm really excited to discuss and learn more about what are the concrete plans for these real-world laboratories.
Okay, thank you, Florian. So I will welcome to the stage the representative of our real-world lab. So the first presentation will be done by OKN, by Jadzia and Justyna. Then we will have a presentation coming from Galway by John and Declan. And then I would like to invite Joe, Mauricio, and Arturo to come to stage and present the lab of Genalguacil. As Florian said, these 3 labs have a different title. OKN is dealing with resilience by shared creativity. Galway is working on the collective intelligences using big data to track the audiences of the festival and lower the carbon footprint. And Genalguacil is dealing with the centralized architectures. So I will leave the first part is the presentation of the 3 labs. And then we will move to the moderated panel, and the moderator of the panel will be Emil, professor from NTNU, who will ask the really difficult question to our real-world lab. Yes, and discuss how it's difficult to implement this idea we have in our proposal in the real setting, yes, real world as our labs. Girls, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marta. We are really pleasure that we are here. I'm Jadwiga from the Norville Cultural Center, and with me, of course, Justyna with our institution. I would like to introduce about our lab, Real World Lab in Nowa Huta, Cultural Resilience Lab. It's one of the third laboratory connected with the Pacesetters project, coordinated by Norville Cultural Center and with cooperation with the Jagiellonian University and Academy of Fine Arts in Krakow. Our Norville Cultural Center is a public institutional in Krakow, in the biggest direction in Krakow, the really beautiful and unique Nowa Huta. Nowa Huta has a 75 years of the story, and our Norville Cultural Center, we have a 70 years of the story. And what is the most important about our places? We observe the changes. And the Nowa Huta is the places with the really strong history, and people have a really strong identify in Nowa Huta. It's really important because they don't said I'm from Krakow. They said I'm from Nowa Huta. So it's really important for the people. And we observe the changes. We are talking, speaking. We are observe the climate changes, the history changes, the needs of the people. So it's really important in our job, be with the people and observe what they need.
We start our journey of implementing and creating the Real World Lab at the beginning of the project, and we start with working with our team and the Jagiellonian University team and Academy of Fine Arts, and we stopped and think about the values that are the most important for us, like what we want to do, what we want to represent by ourselves through our actions and through the whole Real World Lab. And for the most important, like the ground, the rock of our actions is co-creation, the care, sensitivity, openness in community. We also formulate our mission, but I put it on the last slide, so I'm gonna build the tension and show it our mission late. And for the first 18 months of the project was for the building the trust and to show our community how what Pacesetter is all about and how they can maybe take part in it. But it was very slow because we need to interest our community, show them. Not show them that work with them and in a cooperation to create something new. So we start with some actions like the Hyde Parks. There's 2 photos from our meetings in our spaces, and with the first event was in inauguration in the November or October 2024, which is more like official part of inauguration, disseminating to the local authorities, municipality, and then we focused on the community, on the Hyde Parks. Hyde Park was a very open space to talk about your worries, your anxieties, your stress, but also about what your hopes, what you're expecting for the future. And that's what we're doing in our living wall of the hallway. So this moment I can invite you to put something on our living wall. And then we made something like lesson of resilience when we working more with the ideas and the thoughts set on the Hyde Park. And in one of the Hyde Park, we used the collage to help people to express themselves by the arts, because sometimes it's easier to talk through the materials, drawing and arts than with words. And what we've seen and what we heard from our community, that people need safety and the trust with this crazy word in the Polish. We still struggle with the full war in the Ukraine, which is very near to our east border. And we know a lot, like Ukrainian refugees, to dealing with loss of their family members, the tragedy, and it's still very visible in the Krakow. The people need closeness, they need relationships. In the epidemic of the loneliness, it's very important for people to have a connection with real people, not via the internet, with the communicator, but the real, the piece of meat. Sorry for this experience, but the touch, the working with the body. And just another one, the people need to rest. The people is very tired of the workshops, doing gallery exhibition. They just need to metaphorically give up, because in our capitalistic present, they are so crushed by the pressure to the work, constant self-development, that there are very need of rest and to meet with the nature. It's very important to, sleep enough, but it's really crucial needs of our community. And I think a lot of us needs the same needs. And a lot of these needs we discovered during our process, it's connected with the map of challenges, like the anxiety and powerlessness, multi-crisis complexity. So it's show us that the research part is also connecting with the real-world lab work and discover. And for the future, we want to implement the needs that we find and that we pointed by our community, and co-create with them some actions with thoughts about the few initiatives, maybe with the nature, like the allotment gardens, because we know that in the big city, like the Krakow is the second biggest city in the Poland, allotment gardens bring a lot of relief and help to the stressful environment. Also, like the welcome initiatives, the home of culture, which brings and collective the story of the residents and community, and sorry, and the repair cafe, the action focused on the reuse, the repair, not bringing the new things, but focus on the using the old materials. And then we have our mission, which is drawing on culture and art. We co-create and co-explore new solutions to social and climate challenges. We are the space of experimentation in the chaotic reality shaped by the war and climate threats. And now
like Justina said, we had 70 years of history and 70 years to build the safety places. So now I'm thinking, like I heard what Justina said, that Pacesetters is really great project to our Norwood Culture Center. And now we just wanna please Adam to show us some short movie from Nowa Huta. I hope that you can visit us, of course, but here we have some short movie.
And sorry, one more thing. If any on the authors of the creative case studies see the opportunity to link the vast talk, we are ready to open to the concert and talk later after the panel. Thank you.
Okay, and then it's the Galway Real World Labs that's going to present.
Good morning. So, how do you turn it on? That's the next question. Maybe here. Good morning. So basically, in our time allotted, I will tell you a very small bit about Galway and the Arts Festival, and then Declan will do the much more difficult task of explaining what we're going to do in the lab. So basically, the first thing I should say is that Galway, for anybody who doesn't know or hasn't been there, is located very much on the western tip of Europe. We're just literally looking at the North Atlantic for a very long time. So we're a population of 80,000. It has a university of 20,000, another university of about 6,000. Culture is very central to the brand of Galway. In Irish terms, it's very much identified with Galway. It is the gateway to Connemara, which is one of our most beautiful landscapes, and is also the main Irish language speaking area of Galway. So that's kind of the basic stats about Galway, apart from the fact that it is a lovely, lovely place to live, despite a very, very long rainy season of about 11 months and 2 weeks. So moving on to the festival itself, we will be 50 in 2027. It basically covers a number of art forms: music, opera, dance, visual arts, comedy, and it has a discussion platform as well. It started out very much as a small local festival designed to just bring more art to the west of Ireland. It has now become the biggest festival of its kind in Ireland and is now, you know, pretty significant in European terms as well. So my next move is really to stop talking and ask Adam to play a very short video, which will give you a much better indication than I could of the festival.
Wherever you go, it's like a big bullet ready to explode, you know, with art, with beauty, and that is the very first thing that nourishes people, that makes you who you are, that helps shaping identities.
I think that's really exciting about being able to come to Galway every year for the festival is the scale. To see the big top out on the pier, and to see another big top with live music, and to be in flexible theatrical spaces and traditional theatrical spaces is really exciting.
I love crossover that festivals provide. The Galway City does a big thing.
Galway's such an easy, accessible city. There isn't a better place, a better city to come for a really full, rich, varied cultural experience.
Galway has always had to have its arms open to the stranger. That's how it survives. And you need audiences that are up for jeopardy and risk. And I think the Arts Festival provides that. It kind of goes, yeah, go for it.
Just a fantastic place to play too. And I think because of Druid and the festival, the Galway audiences are so well versed. They're such brilliant audiences. They've got high expectations.
I love the Irish audiences. They're so with us in all of the moments. They're so appreciative. You can feel the anticipation, and then that gives us so much more energy to give them. You can just feel the excitement. I've never ever seen an opera like this. This just pushed us way beyond anything we'd seen before.
It's the most extraordinary show I've seen.
I just love to see things where someone's investing so much energy and thought into something so creative. What was so interesting was how the Galway Festival uses the town, how the city is actually brought into the arts, and also how the arts animate the city. You discovered the show because you opened your arms and you invite all those performers in and you give us such a good time, and the feeling in the city is just magic. And there's a great love that the town gives back to people. And for that, I applaud you, Galway, and thank you. I think the Galway International Festival has something different from other festivals. There is a big emphasis on arts changing the world. Everything seems to be almost catalyzing on each other to say to the world, you can't live without the arts, without whatever it is that makes you a human being.
Thank you. So moving on really to just say what happened in 25. So in 25, the festival had, should say it's a 2-week festival. The festival is over 450,000 attendees with 600 performances and across 32 venues. As you might have noticed in the presentation, an awful lot of those venues are temporary venues. We have to convert an awful lot of venues to do what we do. And again, as we move to transition to a low carbon festival, that is one of our major challenges, is how to be sustainable and temporary and come and go in that space of time going forward. We do a mix. We're very keen to be a platform for local artists, for Irish artists, for developing artists, while at the same time bringing in what we would call the best of the world, so that our audiences can see basically people, leaders who are just at the top of their game, and basically at the same time those that are emerging. And we hope, like, we see ourselves as basically a kind of a bridge between the artists and basically the audiences. And ultimately our goal, there's a famous Irish poet called Seamus Heaney, and he talks about blowing the heart open and catching it unawares. And that's always our aim, is to blow the heart open, catch it unawares. And that's our job every summer. It's one we really, really enjoy. So now I'll hand you over to Declan, who will talk more about our climate lab. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So everything was going fine, and then Pacesetters entered the room. So we now call it the Climate Transition Lab in Galway, and it's a partnership between ourselves, the festival, and the University of Galway. And obviously, it's designed to provide an experimental space to test the main ambitions of the Pacesetter programme. In particular, a focus on reframing the urgency of adapting to climate transition from a threat to an opportunity is at the core of what we're doing. So there was a number of things we did. As John mentioned, we have a first thought talk platform, which looks at important issues and particularly environmental issues. And we've been doing that. We had a number of talks under the Pacesetter banner in 2024 and 2025, and we'll continue that into next year's festival as well. At the start of this year, we went through the process of mapping the challenges with our Pacesetter colleagues, and we mapped them back to 3 of the 12 challenges, and out of each one, we've been developing a case study that's particular to reflect that challenge and to answer that challenge, and that will get tested within the 2 weeks of the festival. And so the challenges are countering the loss of diversity, which particularly feeds into the Funeral for Ashes case study, which I'll talk about in a minute. Acknowledge indirect impact, which feeds into us measuring our carbon footprint. And then addressing the crisis of representation and trust, which is reflected in the documentary theatre case study. Funeral for Ashes, that is a case study that happened in the festival in 2025. Once upon a time, Ireland had a forest coverage of over 80%, which has been drastically declining over the recent years. Now I think it's around about 11%, so it's one of the lowest forestation coverages in all of Europe. There is a government agency whose task is to look after the forests for us. They've been planting a lot of non-native woodlands, and in 2012 they imported ash trees from Europe that had a pathogen. And that attacked our native ash trees in Ireland. At one stage, it looked like our entire ash population was going to be extinguished. What the Funeral for Ashes project was that two artists went into the forest. They took multiple photographs of the ash trees, and they created an environment, an installation, which was walled on three sides, and the floor, using projectors overhead, they projected, they created a virtual forest, and that was, the public were invited to come into that. When the public came in, there were cameras in the room, and as the public moved, the forest, not unlike a game engine, the forests reacted to people. So you could encourage the forest to grow, but you could also see the forest decline. So people were interacting with the artwork. And what it did was that usually something like ash tree disease would traditionally fall outside the scope of an artistic or a creative inquiry. And what the project did is it brought that challenge exactly into the field of art as research. It was in the festival for 2 weeks in 2025. Over 15,500 people saw the exhibition and found it a very moving, impactful, and meaningful experience. So that case study has happened. The other two, there are two other case studies that will now feature in 2026. The first one is around audience science. We are engaged with a company, an Irish company called Climate Action, who are helping us to measure our carbon footprint. And what they're doing is they're measuring the footprint over 2024, 2025, and 2026. So again, a lot of the work has been done, but what we're doing is we're building a model and we're refining that year on year and getting better at it, and getting better at collecting the data and analysing the data. But the biggest challenge within that is to measure the carbon footprint of the audience, which from looking at other festivals, the statistics are somewhere between 50 and 75% of the festival's footprint comes from the audience. So there's a real challenge on how to measure that and how to collect that data. And through Pacesetters, we have connected with Eventwood, who were on the stage here earlier this morning. And we have formed, we're going to do a pilot project with them in 2026, where they're going to use big data to look at our audience, see how our audience move, see how they come into the city, how long they spend in the city, where they come from, how they move, etc. And they're going to be able to produce really hard data for us for the first time. Because up to this, we've used questionnaires, we've used hunches, and we've used assumptions about our audience. And that can bring you quite far down the road. But what we feel with Eventwood, there's a really great opportunity to gather really hard data around this topic. The third case study is around documentary theatre. Sorry. Documentary theatre has proven an innovative and effective method for exploring important issues. We're working in collaboration with the Drama and Theatre Department from the University of Galway, and in 2026 we will have talks and discussions and workshops featuring the practitioners from Ireland and international theatre makers who are leading the way in climate-related theatre. The image here is from a theatre project called The Distillation, which drew on personal testimony, news reports and oral histories to show how people in Ireland's Midlands have reacted to the ending of commercial peat harvesting as part of the country's efforts to move towards climate neutrality. Peat in Ireland is, we all grew up on peat. Peat is what makes turf, and it's how Ireland heated its homes for centuries. And because of the high carbon footprint of peat, commercial peat farming stopped over the last 10 years. So that had a huge impact on people who relied on that industry and who relied on turf to heat their homes. So that has a big, it has a social impact on people, especially people living in the Midlands. And what they did was they collected testimonies, and they had discussions, and they went through a documentary process that resulted in a piece of theatre. So it's a very powerful way, again, to engage with people and to explore topics in relation to the environment. So we've just started that work, and we're going to include that as one of our key themes for our 2026 festival. So that's us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now, last but not least, the Henalwasil.
Hello, so we're an act of 3 that also requires some improvisation, as is the general feel of the day, between 2 languages, English and Spanish. So you have to have a bit of patience with us there. I hope that's okay, that we have a bit of an improvised Spanglish moment. Okay. Shall we all stand up, or do you want to stay here, or what do we want to do? No, we'll all go together, come on. No, I don't know how it works. Like our very good colleagues here from the other laboratories, we also want to talk a little bit about the kind of history of Henalwasil, and then the kind of explorations that we've had today through Pacesetters in really understanding what this real-world laboratory is within that context. So we're an unusual combination of the far north and the far south. So it's the Fundación Henalwasil with the Federation of Andalusia Municipals and Provinces in terms of a policy connection, and then our academic partner is NTNU. So we like to call ourselves Bacalao, and in being a bit strange. So I'm going to hand over to Arturo, who's going to talk a little bit about the kind of the context of why Henalwasil is one of the labs.
Hello, I will speak in Spanish. It will be better for everyone. You can believe me.
Yo te hago la traducción.
Perfecto. Bueno, Genalguacil es un municipio de la provincia de Málaga que se encuentra en el Valle del Genal y es el municipio más, o sea, el que está más incomunicado de la zona del valle. Ahí podéis ver en el mapa, lo podéis ubicar, y aunque parezca que está cerca de Estepona, por ubicarnos un poco, está a 1 hora de Ronda y a 1 hora de Estepona.
Okay. As you can see, Genalguacil is in the middle of the province of Malaga. Yet, also it's connected to the Genal Valley. Not far away as you will be able to locate. There's 2 hours difference in between Malaga and Genalguacil in itself, but half an hour away from Estepona.
Thank you.
If not, you're going to do a diputado today. Don't do a diputado.
Un dato que creo que es muy importante cuando se habla de Genalguacil Pueblo Museo y ayuda a comprender el compromiso del municipio con el arte y la cultura.
One of the things that may help us to understand the commitment that you have with the village and culture and art in itself.
Bueno, además de que tiene un proyecto que tiene 30 años de edad, pues que el municipio posee un museo de arte contemporáneo.
Okay, you have to think that there is a long story about Genalguacil with 30 years legacy. Talk about contemporary art and a museum of contemporary art in a tiny village of 470 inhabitants.
Un museo que aloja proyectos y exposiciones de investigación y producción propia que habla de el propio municipio, su tradición, vecinos, entorno.
Yeah, the different activities that are related to the museum and their exhibitions are activities that are placed with the villagers, with the people that have an understanding of it, their context, and as you may see, all the different activities that are connected to the proposal.
En esta imagen podemos ver, digamos, una especie de recorrido por todo el proyecto desde 1994, que es cuando comienzan los encuentros de arte, el primer proyecto que después da lugar a Genalguacil Pueblo Museo.
As you can see, it's one of the initial moments and key in our time frame. It's 1994 with the encounters.
Sí.
Art encounters. Out encounters. It sounds really silly. Yeah, it sounds like a UFO thing.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Cuando dimos forma a este planning, digamos, a este recorrido, junto con Joe, decidimos hacer un recorrido temporal orgánico, tal y como ha sido la creación del propio proyecto, que ha sido algo muy orgánico en el que han aparecido, han desaparecido y va sumándose proyectos al propio proyecto.
You're going to see that there is a visualization on the part of the art encounters, and this map and this visualization, it's a time lapse, the time frame, a roadmap of the different activities that have been held, connected each one of them to the moment and the topic that they were touching upon.
En esta imagen se puede ver, bueno, en estas dos imágenes se puede ver cómo el patrimonio tradicional, digamos, la tradición de Genalguacil Pueblo Museo convive perfectamente de forma completamente espontánea y orgánica, cómo se asume, digamos, el trabajo contemporáneo desde el arte.
Traditional heritage combines perfectly with the contemporary art scenario that we find in the village. Old traditions and that more folklore or local traditions or local history, and it is combined with this modern approach.
Sería otro motivo de conversación, pero creo que es importante resaltarlo, como en algún momento reciente hemos planteado nos hemos dado cuenta cómo los propios encuentros de arte se han convertido en una nueva tradición, ¿no? Como algo desde la contemporaneidad se ha convertido en una tradición, como la gente lo ha asumido perfectamente.
Yeah, we would open
incluso, dificultad para hacer diferentes cambios, ¿no?
Yeah.
Curioso.
Pero again.
Sí, pero creo que
Yeah?
Do you need help?
No, I'm good with the translation. Okay, we would open a different type of conversation. Thanks to the encounters related to the arts in itself, has produced another types of conversations in which even helps to the continuity of the actual project, but also opens the debate of what comes next, ¿no? Lo que viene después, and creates new traditions on what is expected of those encounters of art and what is the result.
Bueno, en esta diapositiva podemos ver cómo en Genaguacil, durante todo el transcurso del proyecto, desde sus inicios, el trabajo, o sea, la co-creación y el trabajo colaborativo es la única forma posible de trabajar en un entorno con pocos recursos, pocas personas, ¿no? Y ubicado donde está ubicado, con todas las dificultades.
The co-creation process and more participatory approach to the arts is the only way that it could be possible, thanks to this lack of resources. That is something that also appeared in the other conversations that we had before in the rural. It helps to vehiculate and articulate the different proposals and different actions that are taking place in the village.
Sí, aquí se ve también cómo los artistas trabajan con los artesanos mano a mano y cómo el laboratorio Pacesetters, ¿no? Digamos que ha venido como a sentar, como a formalizar ese proceso que ya existía en Genaguacil.
As you can see at the right-hand side, we have one of the local craftsmen, that he's a shoemaker, Alvaro, that is also working with artists that do arrive for those residencies at the village. There's already fusion between what's happening in place and the newcomers.
And also Pacesetters.
And also Pacesetters, of course, thanks to...
The Pacesetters process is to formalize and rethink those processes. I'm just the annoying person in the background because he doesn't translate properly.
I know you know all about it.
Bueno, esto es parte de uno de los procesos de investigación sobre el afogado de la cal. Esto es el proceso de la cal.
¿Cómo se? Which is the translation for la cal? Limestone. Okay. It is the whitewashing through the limestone is very traditional. Therefore, the vernacular architecture that you will find I'm going to do an extended version. Limestone and the white paintings that you see in Andalusian villages. It's very unique and one of the signs of identity of the territory. And there was a full research, and then going back to what Arturo was mentioning, you'll have a picture of three moments of that research, you know, like related to the limestone and to the cal, what is it? Wash painting? No, whitewashing. Whitewashing?
Los pueblos blancos.
Los pueblos blancos.
Roman.
It's a Roman tradition.
Esta es, digamos, el ejemplo de cómo los procesos de investigación dan lugar a procesos, o a resultados expositivos, digamos. Esta es parte de esa exposición que versaba sobre los procesos de la cal.
Mm-hmm. And you could see that the result of the investigation comes out in an exhibition that takes place at the museum. You know, that same, yeah.
Sí, bueno, y aquí
with the actual
otro momento de la misma exposición vemos cómo el registro de cómo Antonia la Española, una de las vecinas de Genaguacil, que siempre está dispuesta a participar en los procesos con los artistas, pues hace ese proceso de fogado de la cal.
Yeah, and you can see that Antonia La Española, it shows the process of the limestone as part of one of the activities that is shown at the exhibition.
Bueno, y aquí podemos ver cómo todo este trabajo que se lleva haciendo desde el año 1994, pues desde hace unos 5 o 6 años, pues uno de los resultados, uno del mayor impacto es que viene a cumplir, digamos, la misión por la que se realiza los encuentros de arte, que es revertir la curva de despoblación que viene sufriendo la población.
Okay, I'm going to do a small parenthesis here. Voy a hacer el paréntesis demográfico. Yeah. Going for it. Sorry about that. Okay. You'll see that this is a full reflection of how the mission of why the museum was created. Gives sense to what's happening in General Guacil. What you have to your left-hand side is what we are facing in the demographic challenge and demographic decline, and since 1994 the mission and purpose of the museum does make sense, because by contrast you have the results of the qualification of the Observatory of National Art has highlighted General Guacil as a case that it emerges upon other examples in Andalusia. So it does make full sense, having the demographic challenge on one side and how that creative pulse of breaking those silos and creating a museum where it wasn't expected has a direct reflection.
To the next topic.
Yeah. Okay, we didn't want to say that. We were just under the Museum Picasso. Let's go for the positive ones.
General Guacil desde hace unos años entró, creo que tú ya has apuntado, en el ranking del Observatorio de la Cultura, y en este caso, bueno, ha entrado en varios rankings del propio observatorio, y en este caso era de proyectos con mayor impacto social.
Yeah, it was this image that you have here is a listing from the National Observatory for Culture within Spain. They go region by region.
You're going to make me sing. You're going to make me sing.
Okay.
Because he's getting really annoyed now.
Okay, sorry about that.
Anyway, so we're going to leap. So anyway, this short, rapid history in two languages at the same time, and now I'm going to move to a much more British approach and speak very quickly, was the reason why General Guacil and those ingredients. So we thought it was really important to bring the ingredients, to go back to why General Guacil, why decentralized architectures, because they provide the ingredients for what we want to kind of explore through Pacesetters and how that kind of feeds the real-world laboratory. So not as something separate from what is happening in General Guacil, but something that asks a question of the museum itself, its role within the community, but also a wider sense of how that relates to the role of arts and culture in climate transition. So we kind of set ourselves three kind of ways of looking at that. One is about understanding complexity, but understanding complexity rooted in everyday life, so going back to local knowledge, going back to tradition. The other point as well was this idea of how do we combine different forms of knowledge if everyone's an expert, and also to experiment with understandings of entrepreneurship. So what if it moves beyond being individual to being collective? So we move that. So some of the things we've been thinking about is understanding transitions as being place-based. So if we understand innovation not as a linear process or a process that's imposed on a place, how is it rooted in place and how is it situated? So one of the key things for that, and is it reflected in the ingredients of the museum, as well as this idea of the relational and the collective. So what are these relational processes? So if innovation is about transformation, if innovation is about place, how do these become enacted in relations? The key thing that we drew on was the rhizome. Everybody will know the rhizome has anything to do with arts and culture. And that relates to kind of the notion of decentralized architectures. How do we connect people, place, and practice as independent but interrelated? We've been working through basically a set of activities around policy, around combining and cooperating different forms of practices, but also very much about experimenting between the relationships between the 4 creative case studies that relate to the real-world laboratory in General Guacil, and we heard a bit about that later, and how they become combined as basically a desk activity, but also needs-finding activities as one activity. So the key thing we've been actually asking ourselves about is this idea of mixology. So how do we mix things together? So we've done things that have mixed different people talking about different topics. We've mixed things with different policy initiatives, the Bauhaus, the Rural Experimental, a national-based project with the Ministry of Culture, and also the EU Rural Pact. So how do we kind of create these tensions between things at a very high policy level, but actually then about sitting around a table and having a cake with neighbors? Some of the things that we focused on were looking at everyday practices, so cake is genuinely real. We have things called meriendas, which is a very important tradition in Andalusia, to stop and have a coffee and a cake in the afternoon and talk with your neighbors. So we have shamelessly exploited that into a group called Being Pacesetters, where different people from different places gather together. Unfortunately, there's no cake, which is really annoying, but we do talk about all sorts of random things, like what does it mean to create something new, how does it mean to live with nature, all those kind of things. We've been really much in our collaborations with NTNU, understanding how filmmaking works not as something that we consume or we experience, but how it helps us understand how to combine different forms of knowledge. So some of the experiments we've done is create TV cooking shows, we have wool encounters, we have fermenting goat products, and I think some of the key questions from the needs finding, and this kind of goes back to the rhizome, is how we reframe a rural narrative, but also how we ask questions at a policy level about the governance of innovation. So how does it become a decentralized process, and how do rural regions not become recipients of innovation, but impulse givers of new kinds? So we have various challenges we're addressing, all of them opportunities. So obviously rural depopulation is a critical thing, different form of infrastructure of governance, understanding value in different ways. And one of the key things that we wanted to do was really put the museum at the heart of the real world lab. So, and how that kind of relates to our experiments with the emerging cases that we've identified, of which we have 4, which we'll hear about later in the week. But one of the things we started thinking about was this notion of encuentro. So it's not only an encuentro de arte, but also an encuentro de innovación. And I won't touch on this because we have to stop, but we are turning the exhibition hall of the museum into a wool encounter. And these are some of the challenges we're responding to in the map, and that's us.
Okay, thank you so much for these wonderful presentations. Now we have been welcomed into the real world now. So literally we have been taking the red pill, I think, and treating symptoms of simulation and simulacra and all of those things. And now we're part of the real life, real community. So, I mean, these labs are in many senses very different, right? But it is a main methodology and main conceptual frame of the Pacesetters project. And the aim of these labs is to foster imagination, foster social imagination in a way that is fully embedded, as you have shown, in real life, social, local contexts, right? And the aim is to not only document, register, and so on, but to really experiment and test out ideas, approaches from the creative case studies, right? And do it in collaboration with a variety of actors, entrepreneurs, artists, local citizens, and so on. So this is, I think, quite challenging. It's a complex task. So I wonder if you can sort of delve a bit more into how do you do this? How do you manage this in a way that is both sort of it's research, right? But it also is co-generative together with these local actors, right? So, can you, if you guys from Nova Huta can start? How do you do that using artistic methods, practice-based methods to both experiment, test, co-generate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's a really hard time for us to do, because we, as Sia just said, our presentation, we have 17 years of the history. We are we are with the community of Nova Huta from almost the beginning, as when Nova Huta is kind of city of the migrants who came to Krakow to build the utopian social communistic city. And our activity as a Norwich Cultural Center stand. And now, after the 17 years of the history, we still like the institution owned by the city. So we are ruled by so many legislation, like the municipality, the policy, and we have to like stick to some rules. But also we see that the people and the community needs more, like they need to have the direct impact to what we're doing and what we're planning to do. There's the time of the impose program, like we have this type of activation and you can choose with our from our like calendar. It's over. So we try to like give them space as the Hyde Park, and I know it maybe sounds like there was like some theme, but we were very open about what people want to say, want to express by themselves. Also, we tried to make the open calls and welcome the artists with the residency. We give them our space. We plan that for the future in the Pacesetters. Like we want to host, not the host, because we are not the host of this meeting. Like they're not our guests, they are our co-partners, but we offer them a space, help if they need it, not like we want to impose something on them. We offer the space, the materials, our audience, and we want to tell them, okay, so give us something, like just work. And by this type of activation, we also build the resilience, the trust through the community, because it's very important to us to be very close to the community. Maybe we doesn't have so many thousands of the participants. It's kind of amazing to have more like 400,000. Wow. So, but it's awesome to see, I don't know, the young kids who go to your institution over and over again, and you see as like a toddler, and then I like a teenager, and the kids go to you and call you the aunt. It's like amazing feeling the part of the community, not like the is commercial institution, and I know there's money is always on the table, but we as an employee of our institutional, we feel like the part of the community. We put an effort and try to build the trust. We very often, like the Małgorzata, our colleague, was the inventor, the creator of the project, with a lot of breakfast. People love to eat and talk with each other, like about some tools, I don't know, but they really enjoy to be together, and then we propose some artistic, like the painting together, like working with the music, but not with the scenario that like, play what you want, and we, yeah, so maybe.
Thank you. If we move to the Galway lab, then this challenge is not smaller. I mean, it's with this big event, 450,000 people, and just in 2 weeks, right? So you have developed, let's say, a multi-method approach here with quantitative approach and different things, right? To tackle this, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, our single biggest problem is the fact that we were only 2 weeks. So we're a moment in time. We have to get everything right or in that period, or it doesn't happen. So key for us in all of this, to which Marta will be heavily involved, is knowing exactly what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, what data we need to mine, and where that needs to go. So our relationship with other work packages has to be very tight in order for us to pull it off. The analysis that's required is has to be very clear to us that we know exactly what you want us to do, because while we're doing this, we're also running all these events. People are also going to other events, so to mine that data efficiently and well is kind of the single biggest issues. What are we doing, when are we doing it, and how we're doing it. So that it's the planning phase of that is really critically important to what we have to do in that space of time. Do you want to?
We are finding our feet as we go, is the reality of it. One of the biggest challenges for us, within Pacesetters, we're all researchers, but we're not really researchers. We run a festival. We know how to do that. I think one of the biggest challenges for us is that what we're doing and what Pacesetters is doing is it's very complex, and it uses very complex language to describe itself. It's very foreign to us, and we find the vocabulary and the jargon very impenetrable. And I think what it needs to do better, either we need to get smarter, or it needs to find simpler ways to explain its complexity. And one of the best ways to do that is face-to-face conversations, is to sit down with, the best conversation I've had in 18 months was yesterday with Marta. We sat down for 10 minutes and she explained what she needs from us, essentially. And that's the penny, you can hear the penny dropping. Essentially, for us, Florian used the expression yesterday that it's art as research. It's not research around the art, or it's not research about the art. The art itself is the research. And if we can crack that nut, then we've really achieved something. But we don't know how to do it. We're attempting to do it. I think we can do it collectively. I think we can do it, and we can have experts from Pacesetters and from our partners in the university who can sort of stand back. We're sort of in the eye of the storm, and we're doing it. We're very good at doing, but we need help from our partners to explain what we're doing, or to see the nuggets of, oh, that's really interesting. That's something that we can that can explain artist research. So we are we're like leading the charge, but it's almost like we're too busy running forward to think about what we're doing. We need to contextualize what we're doing. So that's why we need partnerships, and we need other everybody in the room to be helping us.
Great. And then if we move to Renalguacil, at one level it seems much more easy, right? This small village and...
You're joking, right? Are you calling?
But another level, it might be challenging there as well. Not least because it's also the whole valley, right? It's Valle Renal. So I think...
And this mad place called Andalusia.
Called Andalusia, yes. So...
Well, you struggle with the language. I was going to say you two could probably sit down and have a beer together.
Okay. Yes, it is a challenge. Okay, I don't think it's easy. Even though we're managing a 470 inhabitants village, it's over 20,000, more than 20,000 visitors a year to Renalguacil. That's a big impact on the sustainability part. On if we, we do that ratio of difference, it's even more impactful than Galway, and it's complicated to balance. Okay, but what happens was with Genalguacil in itself, it's that 30 years ago, it started as a bold, complicated approach to break the silos. Break the prejudice that we have urbaners to the rural, first of all, saying you are allowed to create a museum. I say,
No, you're not.
You're not.
You can't have a museum. You're a pueblo.
Exactly. First of all, okay, it's already a bold action to go and do a contemporary art museum in a rural area with, tan loco. But not just that, saying break the walls of the museum and extend it to the village. First one. Second one is, with the lab and with the context of Pacesetters, comes that we're bringing in universities and innovation into where it's not expected. Because it looks like that every innovative proposal may happen in the cities. But what if we brought the rural intelligence that it was mentioned already, our TV show. We'll go for that one. We'll do a bit of promo. We do the rural innovation actively engaged to a massive territory, which is the rural areas. Rural areas are facing extremely hardcore challenges. Cities, of course. And last but not least, this approach with innovation and university brings in a different approach to research, bringing students, or breaking the silos of universities and taking them to see the real world and suffer the real world, which is messy, it's complicated, it's imperfect, in which you have to face different problems. And the third pillar of what also the approach that we may have from the lab, and especially in the context of Pacesetters, it's bringing in the entrepreneurship side, the impactful side of being bold in developing a proposal locally, with the context of it's not a startup that you may have in the city. It's a bottom-up initiative that you have to make your neighbor understand what you want, what you're doing, what you're aiming, and that entrepreneur is not the usual entrepreneur. It's an even more wilder, bolder entrepreneur that you may have in an easy context of the city. Therefore, we're breaking the silos on trying to bring, thanks to Pacesetters and through the lab and through the experience of the museum, into a collective impulse to create impact, meaningful impact in our communities.
And everyone thinks we're mad.
always, but that's,
Yeah, and that actually leads me to my next question for you. Working in this way, in these labs, in the messy realities of the real world, right? And in these three different ways, how do you perceive now? It's a lot of iterations, improvisations, planning, all of that. But how do you guys sort of perceive the results in terms of impact, meaningful impact in? You said meaningful impact in communities. Is that your main aims, or what is?
Okay, I'm going to apply into one of those easy ones of innovation. There is always a weak signal. Always a weak signal. You have to be, you must have to be open to hear that weak signal.
I was going to point to Alex.
Okay, because this is where there's sometimes Alex is one of
because he embodies impact right now.
Exactly, right there, a neighbor of Genalguacil. But those we have to amplify those signals that are already happening in the rural, and the context of Genalguacil in connection with other actors that are already present, and we believe that it's the perfect framework to expand. Amplify that impact, give the tools, resources, and support to thrive.
But I think going back to what we've all been saying as well, there's like a genuine question to be asked in terms of the capacities locally. So whether it's in Nova Huta, whether it's in Galway, is because you're asking people to kind of step outside their own normal daily lives and be in their daily lives, but kind of add something to it. And I think, I mean, one of the realities of doing stuff in the real world is a university can do certain things that someone who is a farmer or working in a local business or whatever, or an act in a festival, they need to have kind of accommodating methods to understand how they can be part of something that's asking them also to add to what they're already doing.
In Nova Huta, do you have a comment to that question or challenge?
Maybe I'm gonna think about it and then, because can you like formulate it for me, like the question again?
How do you perceive what kind of, I mean, you experiment, test stuff, but also at some point we will evaluate something, right? What is coming out of the lab in terms of some results, impact, along some dimensions? What is your take on that?
Sure. I'm kind of like Declan said before. We in Nova Huta lab, we cultural resilience lab. We not the researcher. We focused on the work with the people, with them, to them, and with cooperation to them. And we were very grateful to the Jagiellonian University and the Academy of Fine Arts that during the first half of the project they helped us with some very methodological stuff about the research to the Pacesetter, but overall doing our daily basis activities, we're trying to evaluate and talk after some of our activations with the participants and then imply the results to our next action. Maybe Jadzia want to talk about it, because right now we're doing like the research, not really like in the Pacesetter, but overall of our participants and people who are taking part in our actions and what they say.
Maybe I said about Justina said that we are not the researchers, of course, but it's really interesting for us that the Stocznia Foundation from Gdańsk prepared some report for the Wolski Culture Center in Warsaw about the social culture center in general. Why people want to go to the culture centers, why they need it, and that the people can make the program, for example. And our Hyde Park from the Pacesetters project is on the report like a good practice, that this kind of things, this kind of art-based research tool is really good for us, because the people said that it's okay, that they can feel safe, they can tell us what they need. So it's really great, and they told us it was nice, because I can show my feelings, for example. So for us it's really important, and we know that the way is good for us and for the participants, for the residents from Nova Huta in general.
Yes, thank you. And I mean, in your case, the cultural resilience in the context of war, migration, all of that is, I mean, the potential for huge impact is great, right? And in your case, it's simple, huh? Reduce the carbon footprint. So, case solved.
Well, I think we are a bit selfish in what we want to do with Pacesetters, because our aim was always, do we need to move to a low carbon future? So the big factors for us, the biggest factor in all this, as Declan said, is in having a festival, we're attracting a big audience. They have a big carbon footprint. It's very hard to, like, if you look at what a lot of festivals are doing, they're looking at their own impact, but they're finding it very hard to make that jump to influence their audience. So 2 things for us are, 1, the audience science would allow us to really jump about 3 levels in finding out what our audience is doing, their behavior patterns. We then need to use things like documentary theatre to actually influence those behavior patterns. So like what we put on ultimately has to influence the people who are coming to the festival, so that ultimately the different evaluations we do should allow us, in theory anyways, to basically correct our own path to help us guide our audiences to allow us ultimately to move to that low carbon future.
Wonderful. I think we might be running out of time. Huh? Yeah, I think so. Yes. I think we're already over time. So, okay, then a big round of applause for the great labs and the panel.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. Why are you waiting?
There we go. Hello. This is just to say there was a last-minute addition to the program, so if you feel like doing something that isn't sitting in a chair right now, you're very welcome to come over to the Black Box Theater in room 005 with me, and we will do some embodied practice around some of the things we have been discussing. If you would like to continue sitting in a chair, please be my guest. Thank you.
Yes, and we will also continue here in chairs, with a session that is specifically dedicated on the challenges of skills needs, urgent skills needs, in order to develop creative competence. And this was also kind of last minute scheduled. We are very happy that Sönke Zele and David Crombie from the Cyanotypes Blueprint Skills Alliance, another EU-funded project, will introduce us to their approach of triple loop learning. And this is something that we also adapt in the context of the real-world laboratories. We will start this session here. We need a short break. We will start this session here at 1:30.